So, yeah, I was in Fort Lauderdale Airport at the time of the shooting. Well, that's not quite accurate. I got there almost right at the same time as the shooting. So this is my story of my experience in the Fort Lauderdale Airport during the shooting and the aftermath of the shooting. I was in Miami on business, and I was scheduled to fly out of Fort Lauderdale Airport around 6 p.m. But because of inclement weather in Atlanta, I changed my flight to earlier. I changed it to 2 p.m. I got to the airport about 1 o'clock. My Uber driver couldn't get to the terminal to drop me off because of police cars blocking it. Of course, occasionally at the airport you see police cars doing things, and it's not a big deal. So he actually drove me around inside the parking garage for a little while. He couldn't find a really good place to drop me off. And finally I just said, let me out. I'm going to be late. So he let me out, and I walked for a long time through the parking garage. And I finally got to my terminal 1. I was flying Southwest, and that was Terminal 1. And I came in through the baggage area. And I walked all the way through the baggage area. And I took the elevator to go to check-in. I had 4 bags with me, so I had to check some bags. As I was getting on the elevator, I looked over and I saw a monitor, and it was tuned to CNN or MSNBC or something like that. And the little ticker at the bottom said, "Shots fired, Fort Lauderdale Airport." And it had pictures of video of people on the runway. I thought, wow, that's right where I am. But I looked around. I didn't really see anything that made me nervous. Everybody was calm. There was nothing going on. It was a normal day at the airport. So I go ahead and I just go to security, go get into security line. It's pretty short, and I'm just talking to people in line. Jen calls me and says, "Have you heard about the shooting?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I saw it on the news, but I don't know a whole lot about it." But it seems like it was in a different area. And so we chat for a second, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's fine. I'll see you soon." And we hung up. And I get through security, and I go to my gate. I'm thinking I'm late, but they're just about to start boarding, so I'm not that late. And I sit down by where people are boarding, where people are about to start boarding. And it's a full area, lots of people everywhere. It's kind of a packed flight. And so I'm just sitting there, and we can kind of see far away. There's a monitor and the news is on, and we can see them talking about it. And we're talking about it amongst ourselves as passengers do. And then they announced that our flight is going to be delayed, and they apologize for that. And then over the loudspeaker of the airport, they say, the announcer comes on and he says, "All operations are suspended. No credible threat." And that's kind of weird. Didn't really know what that meant. What we thought was, okay, they've suspended flights, but that's an overabundance of cautiousness. They're just being cautious. So we're sitting there talking to each other, and we're like, well, if they're canceling all the flights, maybe there's more to it than just a single shooter in the baggage claim area. We don't know. I've been looking at my phone, looking on the news, seeing what I saw on Twitter. I made a couple of tweets that I was in Terminal 1 and I was fine, and it had nothing to do with I was safe, and it didn't have, I was fine. I texted my boss and my colleague, and Everything seemed normal. But my phone was starting to lose power. I mean, it was really low on power. I had been working all morning and using it, and it was just low on power. So this was around 2:30 probably. One of the girls I'd been talking to 2 seats away from me, offered to charge my phone in the plug that she had been using. Her phone was full. She said, "Oh, you can charge it right here." And I just wanted a little bit of juice to make sure I got through the rest of my flight. And so I handed her my phone and I said, "Sure, go ahead, just charge it for a little bit." It was right when I handed her my phone that people started screaming to my left. People started screaming and running. And it was all of a sudden, it was just panic in the airport. It was just crazy chaos. And because we had that heightened sense of awareness and security, we all just immediately assumed the worst and we ducked for cover or we ran. I ended up running. I ran like super fast. I didn't have my bags in my hands. I just ran. I didn't get my phone. I didn't look back. I didn't see anybody. I didn't do anything. I just jumped over somebody who had dived to the floor. I jumped over them and I ran to the nearest door, which was the jet bridge door. And I ran down the jet bridge. And the airplane door was open and I ran onto the airplane. Several of us made it on the airplane, about 10 or 15 of us. I don't know how many, but there was a few of us. And the flight attendants were all like, "What happened? What happened? What happened? What's going on?" And we were just like, "We don't know. We're running." They screamed and it's chaos. And so their flight attendants were like, "Shut the door, shut the door." And it was just immediately they shut the door. And I think they shut the door on some people and didn't let them in. But they were like, "Okay, the airplane door is shut and you guys are safe in here. What's going on?" And we tried to tell them that we don't know what happened. There was a guy who was on the airplane who swore he heard gunshots, a bunch of them. And so the flight attendants, had no idea what to believe or what not to believe. They just knew that everybody ran onto the airplane, or a bunch of people ran onto the airplane. As we were looking out the airplane doors, we could see hundreds, if not thousands, of people leaving the airport. Some running, a lot of people crying. They were coming out of all the exits everywhere. They were just pouring out of the building and running, hiding behind things. And it was pretty scary. We didn't know what was going on. Kind of realized at that point that I didn't have my phone, and if something had happened inside the terminal and there were people that were hurt or injured or dead inside, that if I didn't get in touch with somebody in my family or work colleagues who knew I was in the airport at the time, that I needed to let them know I was okay. So I borrowed a phone and I called my dad and I told my dad what had happened and where I was and what was going on. And right when I was on the phone with my dad, a group of people who had kind of settled from running out on the airport tarmac, they had been kind of collected. They collected themselves and were kind of standing out there in a group. And then right when I was on the phone with my dad, all of a sudden they started running a different direction. They just ran. And so in my mind, I was thinking that's a third attack. So we had the initial shooting in the baggage claim of Terminal 2. We had something happen in Terminal 1 that I ran from. And then we had something happening out on the tarmac about probably 2:35 or 2:40 or something like that. And we were all real scared. Because at that point it seems like a very coordinated attack, a very coordinated effort. And we had no idea how far it would go, how long it would last, what all was going on. It kind of felt like, with the World Trade Center, the first tower got hit by an airplane, and you kind of hope in the back of your mind that maybe it was an accident, a horrible accident. And then the second plane hits, and you just know that it wasn't an accident. That's kind of how it felt. The second incident in my terminal, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't just a lone gunman. It was a coordinated terrorist attack. That's what it felt like in that moment.